going on, Bills Mafia? Fernando Schmude here with another Leading the Charge via Buffalo Rumblings. And today, in search of some help for this Bills roster in 2023. And unfortunately, this help won't be available in real life, right? But it's always fun to think about if you were able to add some of the best Bills of the drought era, which ones would be added to reinforce this Bills roster on its way to a Super Bowl in a Super Bowl win, maybe. So last Tuesday, I was here and I compared the positional groups of this Bills roster to the others in the AFC East, and surprisingly, the Bills lost on several of those contests to their opponents, to the Dolphins, to the Jets. I tried my best to avoid being a homer. I tried my best to not being really too Bills sided, but maybe I even tried too hard. So it's very debatable where I have those rankings correctly or where I really avoided to be a homer. But the truth is, according to my comparisons and my rankings, the Bills won just with quarterback position with Josh Allen on the offensive side of the ball, and that was it. The other best ranked Bills positional groups went second or third overall in the division. And so in today's exercise, I'm going to try to add one Bills from the drought era to each of these positional groups so we can reinforce them and make them maybe the best in the AFC East or the best possible to help the Bills achieve their goal to coming back to a Super Bowl. So feel free to comment in the comment section in the YouTube if you are watching in another opportunity, not live with me. Feel free to add your list there. Feel free to tell me if you agree or disagree with my choices. If you are alongside me here live, it's going to be an honor to discuss with you and to see your list too. So the chat is open, and I'm going to bring your lists also to this episode of the Leading the Charge. Let me already say in advance, this version of the Leading the Charge every Tuesday is going to change for every Friday as soon as I come back from my 1 week vacation. So next week, no Leading the Charge at all, no Portuguese version on Sundays, and no Leading the Charge on next Tuesday. But in 2 weeks, I will be back with the Bills already practicing in the training camps at St. John Fisher College. And Friday at noon, this Leading the Charge will be going on every Friday at noon, and I count on you. And it's going to be a blast to cover the Bills this season in search for a Super Bowl berth. So let's start today's exercise, adding the Bills from the drought era. What are the rules? My mainly rule to make this exercise more interesting is keeping players who played even a single snap of Bills playoff football not eligible to this ranking or to be an addition. Okay, so it's gonna take a lot of interesting players and maybe guys who would be no-brainers to be added to this list out of the exercise. For example, Kyle Williams, maybe my favorite Bills ever. He's out of the list. He played playoff football for the Bills. Thankfully, right? Thankfully, he's out of my list. So Kyle won't be able to be eligible to this list. LeSean McCoy would be one of the favorites to earn a place in the running back room. He played playoff football for the Bills. He played against the Jaguars, and he's not eligible for this exercise. So Eric Moulds is a no-brainer for me. I'm of the opinion that Eric Moulds is the best wide receiver the Bills ever had. Okay, the best Bills wide receiver ever, in my opinion, over Andre is Eric Moulds, and unfortunately he couldn't play with prime Jim Kelly in the Super Bowl seasons. He played most of his career during the drought. Anyway, he's still not eligible because he was part of some of the Bills playoff teams from the late 90s. So only Bills that never saw a single snap for the Bills in the playoffs are eligible for this exercise, and that's the way this exercise is gonna happen. Feel free to comment, feel free to add your opinion, and I'm gonna read it after doing my list. So, without further ado, let's start our exercise. I'm gonna start from the defensive side of the ball. I just wanna bring one thing to attention. In 2018, let me add it to the screen. In 2018, our amazing Dan Lavoie, he wrote an article about the all-drought Buffalo Bills team, voted by Bills Mafia via Buffalo Rumblings community. Okay, and in this exercise, in this all drought Buffalo Bills team, guys who played some playoff football for the Bills were eligible. So LeSean McCoy made the list, Eric Moulds made the list. All right. But a lot of others didn't play a single snap for the Bills in a playoff situation, and they will be eligible for exercise, like Drew Bledsoe, like Stevie Johnson, like Scott Chandler, Fred Jackson, Jason Peter, right? Ruben Brown played for the Bills in some playoffs in the 90s. So Eric Wood played a little bit of playoff football for the Bills, right? In his last season. So he's not eligible. Pat Williams played playoff football for the Bills in the late 90s, so he's not eligible. Kyle Williams, the same way. Aaron Schobel is eligible. Mario is eligible. London Fletcher is eligible. Takeo Spikes, all great names to be considered in today's exercise. Nate Clements. Antoine Winfield is not eligible. He played playoff football for the Bills late in the 90s. Terrence McGee is eligible. Aaron Williams, Jarvis Bird, all eligible to this exercise. Brian Moorman is eligible, no doubt. Okay, so here's the list of all, and Roscoe Parrish made the team as a punt returner, also another guy who's eligible. So that's the all Bills drought team elected by you, Buffalo Bills fans, in 2018. And Dan Lavoie covered this content with this article. I just wanted to bring it on to today's Leading the Charge, since we have a lot of players that are going to be in the discussions here today, and they deserve so. So, starting our exercise from the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to start with the defensive line, all right, on the defense side of the ball. And that's one of the positional groups that it was one of the most difficult ones to make a selection, because there are such great options there. And I also not just picked the best available player, but I tried to consider the players the Bills have available for them in the roster nowadays. So with that in mind, I see biggest need inside on the interior defensive line, instead of in the outside at the edges, because we'll have Von Miller back, we have Greg Rousseau, we have Leonard Floyd added, right? And then the rotation with Peneza, Bashan, Shaq Lawson, those guys being rotated. I see the edge position with better depth and a better top-notch talent, with Von Miller being maybe the best player in this defense when he's 100% healthy. In the inside defensive tackle position, okay, Daquan Jones has been a pleasant surprise for this team, and Ed Oliver just re-signed with the Bills, but there are still a lot of questions about Ed Oliver's potential, and if he can fulfill it, and if he can be really dominant for longer stretches instead of just shorter periods. So I believe the defensive tackle is a bigger need than the edge position, and it played a major role in my choice. All right. As I said before, Pat Williams not eligible. He would be uh, one of the main names in this election. But we have guys like Aaron Schobel, awesome Bills during the drought, one of our best edge defenders ever, one of our best pass rushers ever, and he no doubt he deserves to be on this team, but he won't make this team in part because of what I just said. I think the edge players are better than our interior players. Our edge options are better than our interior options. And and Kyle is not eligible. He played playoff football for the Bills, but names that they were my final choices. All right. Before the last two final choices, Sam Adams. I wanted to mention Sam Adams too because that big guy was awesome inside of the defensive line in the early 2000s. Big-bodied guy, awesome run stuffer, and I have no doubts that adding a prime Sam Adams to this Bills defensive tackle rotation, no doubt it would have made Matt Milanos and Terrell Bernards or Dorian Williams or whoever wins the job at the middle linebacker position life easier because Sam Adams could plug up that middle and occupy blockers, big-bodied guys, run stuff potential all the time, and no doubt he would have been a great choice here. But he finished third, and I was between Mario Williams and Marcel Darius, and my pick is Marcel Darius to the Bills reinforcement in the defensive line. Why would Marcel Darius be a great addition? Look, I know our last memories from Darius aren't good. He really couldn't stay fit, stay on at his best after getting his payment after getting paid. But Marcel Darius in his prime, dude was a stud. He was an all-pro. He was a Pro Bowler. He was an amazing run stuffer inside. Could play nose tackle or three technique, but he also could rush the passer. In his All-Pro season in 2014, he had 10 sacks. So we're talking about our best dreams for Ed Oliver is what Marcel Darius did when he was in his prime. And so adding Marcel Darius to this rotation and defensive tackle position would have been awesome for this team because he would really strengthen this position. He would really improve our defensive. He would really keep our linebackers clean. I think those games where we can see every year where our defense struggles to stop the run and it seems they are always waiting for the pass and other teams can run all over the Bills defense all game long. They aren't many, but they happen and they appear year after year, right? We have this kind of game. I think with Marcel Darius inside, the chances of this happening would decrease in a big way. So that's why I think adding Marcel Darius there is a no-brainer. Obviously, adding Mario Williams opposite to Von Miller would have been a dream also, right? Because prime Mario Williams was more dominant, in my opinion, than prime Marcel Darius. He was maybe more clutch, more decisive player. And imagine having prime Mario Williams opposite to prime Von Miller. It would be crazy. So I'm high on Greg Rousseau, maybe higher, definitely higher on Greg Rousseau than on Ed Oliver and any other defensive tackle we have. So I hope Greg Rousseau can take a step forward this season and improve, especially as a pass rusher, since he's been awesome as a run defender. And we just added Leonard Floyd to be another key piece to the pass rush. So those three guys made me go Marcel Darius' way at the defensive line instead of Mario Williams. But you can't go wrong with Darius or Williams in this list, reinforcing the Bills' defensive line. Let me know your opinion. Let me know what you think. But that's my first choice for the Bills' defensive side of the ball, reinforcing the Bills with drought-era players. Marcel Darius reinforcing our defensive line. Then the linebacker group, a group where we have Matt Milano. He's awesome. And in my list, in my positional groups rankings from AFC East and the comparisons, the Bills are unfortunately the third rated, the third best one, because we have a question mark. I'm really hyped on Terrell Bernard, but I can't really, we can't assume, we can't take for granted that he's going to step in and play awesome football in Tremaine Edmunds' place. So it's tough to rank the Bills linebacker group over a group like the Jets with proven people like Quincy Williams and especially CJ Mosley, over the Dolphins one with Dave Long, Jerome Baker, guys who are proven already, experienced. And we have the best linebacker in the division in Matt Milano, but how about his partner, right? So it's difficult. I hope Bernard can play really well, but there is no question in my mind that if we could add one of those awesome Bills drought era linebackers to the fold, we would have guaranteed an awesome play from one of those guys. And the guys that I considered for this position, Paul Posluszny. Paul Posluszny was a guy who I really liked. I liked his leadership. I liked him. I wasn't part of the fan base who thought that Pos just tackled people 5 yards past the line of scrimmage and things like that. I think he was in a great situation in the defenses that he played for. He had some limitations, but he was an around guy. He left the Bills for the Jaguars and played a long time for the Jaguars in the middle of their defense, being a 3-down guy. So that's a guy who would have been a nice middle linebacker for these Bills, a nice partner for Matt Milano if you could add him. But he's in my choice. The final two pieces that I was in doubt were London Fletcher and Takeo Spikes. This partnership was awesome in the 2004 season, and London Fletcher was more productive along the years, right? He played more time for the Bills. He could stay healthy all his career. It's amazing how Fletcher never got injured, how he could always be there, and that's a great ability, right? The availability is maybe the main ability. So London Fletcher, I'm sure he's going to be the choice for a lot of people listening to me today. But I can't pick London Fletcher over Takeo Spikes. And I know Takeo Spikes is more of an outside linebacker than middle linebacker. But let's be honest. In the Bills schemes and what the Bills want from the linebackers, even their actions have showed that they want interchangeable pieces there. They don't want a guy who clearly is the middle linebacker and another guy, Matt Milano, who clearly is an outside linebacker, and Matt Milano is our Swiss knife kind of weapon, and our middle linebacker is the big and long guy. No, unfortunately, that's not what the Bills want. That's why they didn't want to keep Edmunds. I don't think it's fair and it's correct to go this way, but they weren't like, oh, we must keep Edmunds at any cost. So they let him go. They didn't overpay for him, and they want another guy to be an interchangeable piece with Milano. Bernard and Dorian Williams fit perfectly this mode, athletically speaking. They gotta show on the field they are capable. But Takeo Spikes, this guy, man, he would be awesome alongside Milano. Takeo Spikes was just like Milano, this kind of guy who could be a little bit of everything and do everything really well, man. He could rush the passer, he could cover, he could run, he could hit. He was a playmaker. He forced fumbles, intercepted passes. So having prime Takeo Spikes pre-injury version alongside Matt Milano as our linebackers, man, it would be crazy. It would be awesome to this team and to this defense. So my choice for the to reinforce the linebacker groups, no doubt, Takeo Spikes, the first one. London Fletcher would be my second option, and then Popos Luzny, and maybe over Popos Luzny, Angelo Crowell, who was the guy who replaced Takeo Spikes after he got injured and played really, really well. Angelo Crowell, I believe he was really underrated, and he did a great job, no doubt. Other guys who are worth to be mentioned, Nick Barnea, when he arrived uh, to play for the Bills, did a great job as a middle linebacker, a veteran coming from the Packers. And Kiko Alonso had his moments also. It was a short stint, but he was a stud, a playmaker. And I think all those guys deserve to be mentioned uh, in this list. But no doubt, Takeo Spikes my choice. So far on the defensive side of the ball, reinforcing the defensive line, Marcel Darius. Option B, Mario Williams. Reinforcing the linebacker group, Takeo Spikes. Option B, London Fletcher. Let me know if you are in agreement with my picks, if you disagree, if I'm not mentioned people that you believe are worth being mentioned here. Let me know via chat, via comment section on YouTube. It's going to be a pleasure to interact with you. Let me give some seconds for our partners or sponsors. So with Marcel Darius and Takeo Spikes already reinforcing the defensive line and the linebacker groups, our defense definitely seems and looks way better already. It's a championship level defense, in my opinion, with those two guys. But we still can add somebody to reinforce our defensive backfield. And our defensive backfield seems really good on paper, in my opinion, right now. I wish Kyrie Elam could already have the quarterback two job secured and earned by now, but I hope the way McDermott is taking this competition helps him to become the best player he can be sooner rather than later. On the other hand, Tre'Davious White seems ready to come back to and play at his best again. And we have Micah Hyde back alongside Jordan Poyer. We have Taylor Rapp as a solid depth piece at the safety group. And we have Teron Johnson, who's really, really important as our nickel corner, who can stay on the field all game long and avoid us to go to the base 4-3 defense. So it's even difficult to find a place to start somebody. I think since Kyrie Elam is still competing, that's the place where it's more wide open, right, for a new starter. And even John Roberts is mentioned here via chat. I believe Kyrie Elam got better later in the season, and I agree, John. And I was really impressed by the way he played against the Dolphins in that playoffs game. And I really believe he earned that cornerback two spot during that playoff stretch. But it seems he's still competing against Dane Jackson and Christian Benford. It says a lot about Dane Jackson and Christian Benford's capabilities of working hard, studying the tape, and doing the right things to stay in a competition with a first-round pick who played well recently. But man, I really wish the team and McDermott and the defensive coaches were giving more confidence to Kyrie Elam, like, okay, you are the cornerback 2 or you are the cornerback 1A, and you were drafted to be cornerback 2 or cornerback 1A, and you earned the job on the field last season. So we are trusting you. Go and do your best and play at your best. Be yourself. This kind of encouragement, but it's not what's happening right now. They are again putting him in a competition and making him earn uh, on the practice field and and on the filming room and doing all the right things to get the job. I hope he wins it. I don't see Benford and Dane Jackson. I like both of them, but I don't see them with potential to be a stud cornerback one. They have limitations to their games that Kair doesn't have. So I hope he can really win this job. But right now, yeah, and John mentions Christian also practicing as a safety, and he can be our safety of the future, right? Since Poyer and Hyde aren't getting any younger. Anyway, I believe this cornerback two spot is the place where it would be easier to add a proven guy right now, since Elon is still competing, right? Other one would, in my opinion, be nice to add from this Bills drought, the Bills drought era players. I believe Jairus Byrd was awesome. Jairus Byrd was one of the best playmakers in the NFL for a couple of years playing for the Bills. Unfortunately, the Bills again weren't doing really well, and Byrd couldn't really contribute to a team who fought for anything meaningful. But Jairus Byrd was a ball hawk safety, and having Jairus Byrd in a package like clear passing down, and you go down with three safeties, and you add Hyde, Poyer, and Jairus Byrd, man, it would be crazy to throw against them, right? Because that dude um, could really make great reads, could really catch the ball, intercept passes, but he was also a nice tackler, something that people don't mention enough. Jairus Byrd could tackle really well. He was an awesome safety, and that's a guy who I'd love to add to our defensive backfield. Since we have Hyde and Poyer, obviously he isn't my first choice. Um, Antoine Winfield would be a great name, but he's not eligible. He played some Bills playoff football. Another guy who comes to mind, Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore never played at his best for the Bills, right? He really flourished after leaving and playing for the Patriots. So I don't think it's fair to take the Patriots version of Stephon Gilmore and add to our team. Otherwise, it would be a no-brainer to add Stephon Gilmore opposite to Davis White, the prime Stephon Gilmore version, the one that didn't play for the Bills. He played for the Patriots. So I'm not adding the Bills version Stephon Gilmore because that was a guy who avoided tackling. In my opinion, he was afraid to tackle. He was a guy who got burned more often than we wanted, and was a guy who directed blame to others more than I liked. So I'm not adding Stephon Gilmore to this team. So I'm between two guys in the defensive backfield, two cornerbacks, all right? One is Nate Clements. Nate Clements was awesome. Nate Clements could cover, he could hit. Who doesn't remember that awesome big hit on Tom Brady? And that by itself, I think, should guarantee Nate Clements a place on this team, right? So maybe if the idea is to add a cornerback too, Nate Clements should win it, right? And you could plug him opposite to Trey White and have a great cornerback two there, or even a cornerback one if Trey can't recapture his prime form, right? Nate Clements could play at this level. He was awesome, and I think it would be fair to have him as the number one choice to reinforce our defensive backfield. But my guy to win this place isn't Nate Clement, and it is Terrence McGee. Terrence McGee was awesome early on. Unfortunately, he played a long time for the Bills. He was a nice veteran late in his career, but early on he was not just a stud at the cornerback position, but he was awesome returning kickoffs, right? As a returner, what a player, man. And he was definitely one of my favorites growing up, and I'd love to add Terrence McGee as a double weapon here, as a guy who could play cornerback at a really awesome level, be a playmaker there, cornerback too, but also a returner. So the guy who I would pick right now to reinforce the Bills' defensive backfield would have been Terrence McGee. Terrence McGee is my choice. Nate Clements, option B. Honorable mentions: Jairus Byrd, Stephon Gilmore. Uh, I don't know if we have. I loved Aaron Williams, but I don't really believe Aaron Williams played on the same level of those guys. Donte Whitner was was a loud guy, but never played up to his potential. Liability against the pass. George Wilson had his moments, but I think those guys are on a whole another level. Even Leodis McKelvin had his moments, played really well at some point in his career, but Terrence McGee, number one, then Nate Clements, and then Stephon Gilmore. Oh no, Jairus Byrd at safety. Okay, guys. So defensive side of the ball settled. I reinforced this Bills roster with Marcel Darius in defensive line, Shaquille Spikes at linebacker, and Terrence McGee at cornerback. Those are the reinforcements I brought in from the Bills from the drought era. With the defensive side of the ball settled, let's move on to the offensive side of the ball and see which players we could add from those teams that, despite not achieving success and not being able to go to the playoffs, we could see really nice players, really talented ones playing for them and unfortunately not achieving the success they really wanted and worked for. So in the offense I'm gonna start with the trenches again, offensive line, and that's a place where the Bills uh, didn't really have awesome players available for my exercise because Ruben Brown wasn't an option since he played playoff football for the Bills, and Eric Wood also a long time Bill, a leader, but also played for the Bills in the playoffs. So it didn't give me a lot of options to work with, and with the names that I could work with, some guys that I really liked. For example, Andy Levitri is an underrated guy who left, not playing playoff football for the Bills, and he was a really nice left guard. I think adding Andy Levitri to this team would add a proven guy. We don't know. We hope in this competition side, Connor McGovern, Ryan Edwards, Osiris Torrance now being drafted, and Ryan Bates coming back and working and battling against those guys. We hope they can play at their best and really the two guys who win the jobs at left and right guard can play at good level because they are going to compete against another solid players, solid starters with potential to be even better. So we hope the winners of this competition can play really well, but there are no guarantees so far. So Andy Levitri would be a guaranteed floor over those guys, in my opinion. So Andy Levitri would be a nice name to add there, but he isn't my choice. The guy who, in my opinion, is a no-brainer to have added as reinforcement to this offensive line from the Bills from the drought era is Jason Peters, right? Jason Peters, who was gone way too soon, right? Unfortunately, and became a stud for the Eagles. Jason Peters is my choice. Imagine having Jason Peters and you could move maybe Dolk to the right side, or even play Jason Peters on the right side. It's up to the coaches, right? But Jason Peters was a stud, was an all-pro caliber guy, and no doubt we would have been more secure at the edges and protecting Josh Allen and establishing the run. Jason Peters could do it all, right? So Spencer Brown is a big question mark. The coaching staff is betting and trusting him to get better and play at his best now in his third year and his first real off season of work, and I'm curious, I'm anxious, and kind of excited to see what Spencer Brown can do because the potential is really here, it's really there, right? But imagine the opportunity to add Jason Peters would have been too much to pass on. So Jason Peters is my first option. Then maybe Andy Levitri. And another guy who comes to mind is Cordy Glenn. All right, I believe Cordy Glenn was traded before the Bills make the playoffs, so I think it makes it a possibility. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember if Cordy Glenn was part of that Bills playoff team, but I don't think so. I think he was traded. And Cordy Glenn was really good before his injuries, right? I really believe Cordy Glenn was better than Dion Dawkins before his injuries. So he's a little bit maligned for some fans because of his performances after his injury, but pre-injury Cordy Glenn was a really solid left tackle, dependable guy, and that's another one who would be an reinforcement over Spencer Brown nowadays if he was at his best, at his prime. So those are the names to the offensive line, in my opinion. The others aren't really exciting. Maybe Langston Walker, a guy who played right tackle for the Bills in the 2000s and played well, but nothing special in the right tackle, right? But he could secure his spot and be a nice starter for a kind long time. So he should be mentioned here. But my top three, Jason Peters, no brainer. And then it's between Andy Levitri, second option, and Cordy Glenn, the third option, in my opinion. That's the reinforcement for the offensive line. Moving on, we still have weapons like pass catchers, wide receivers, and tight ends. I'm just separating by the way I graded the positional groups in the AFC East last week. Okay, guys. So if you missed that episode, go back via Spotify, via YouTube, Buffalo Rumblings channel, my own channel, and check it out. I ranked the AFC East positional groups and tried my best to not be a homer. I believe I achieved this, even if I was a little bit unfair with the Bills groups. But I'm trying to reinforce them with Bills from the drought era. And so far, I have added some nice players that really make this team better. And in the offensive side, it's not different with Jason Peters on the offensive line. And now I'm going to move to the running back spot, a place where we have the Bills always had awesome running backs. And during the drought era, it wasn't different, right? So, again, LeSean McCoy is not eligible. He played playoff football for the Bills. But there are a lot of awesome guys available here. And I believe Fred Jackson would be the choice for most of the people because he was awesome and he was a fan favorite, and it would be easy for me to add Fred Jackson to the team now. I'd love to do that. I think Fred deserved to be on a winner like this team, and he could do it all. And if we didn't have James Cook, and if we haven't spent a second round pick on James Cook, and if I wasn't counting on him to really play well this season, I think Fred Jackson would have been my choice. Because if I needed a guy who could do it all and I wanted to be on the field all the time as most as possible, this guy would have been Fred Jackson. But since I'm counting on James Cook to be the speedster and to be a guy who can hit some home runs and contribute on the passing game, and I want to see him on the field, Fred Jackson won't be my choice here. CJ Spiller is another guy who we could mention, but again, what I just told you, I just said about James Cook, I think it fits CJ Spiller's game. So maybe if we were the Dolphins building the team, we would pick CJ Spiller because they are all about speed, and imagine having Spiller when not having Cook. So it's crazy how much speed we would have there. But no, I'm not picking Spiller too. And what are the other guys that come to mind? Beast Mode. Beast Mode was awesome for obviously he played his best for the Seahawks, but even the Bills version, when not having off-field problems, dude was a beast, right? So adding Marshall Lynch to a backfield with Josh Allen and in with James Cook as the speed guy to complement him, I think it's awesome. It's a great idea, and it's an easy pick to select Marshall Lynch. Another guy who comes to mind, Travis Henry. Travis Henry played really well for the Bills in the early 2000s, could do it all and and run hard. I really like Travis Henry, so he's a guy who's worth being mentioned. Uh, but neither of them are my picks. And my pick for this place to the reinforcement for this Bills roster with James Cook on it and expecting Cook to be a contributor, the guy who I'd pick to play in this backfield would have been Willis McGahee. I know a lot of people will be mad at me because McGahee had he his trouble with Bills Mafia after leaving and trash talking the city and all of that. But truth must be said, Willis McGahee was a stud. Willis McGahee was so physical, so hard nosed as a runner. He had the speed, he had the size. He was a bruiser, but he was so fast. I think a lot of what we see in our backfield now with our new running back ex-Patriots, Harris, Damian Harris. I think Willis McGahee elevates the Damian Harris traits to a whole another level, to elite level. I think Willis McGahee as a Bill was just like this, and I would really love to see prime Willis McGahee with this Bills offense and in the backfield with Josh Allen and taking a break so James Cook could come to the field and contribute with his speed. So I'd really love to add Willis McGahee to this team, and he will get the nod for me over Marshall Lynch, over Fred Jackson. And I know a lot of people will disagree, but that's my opinion. And if you look at the tape and you look at the production and how efficient, how important Willis McGahee was for those Bills, and how efficient he was at the goal line and inside the red zone, I think he would take a major. He would help a lot Josh Allen in the red zone and take the responsibility away from Josh Allen in that zone, in that part of the field, and scoring a lot of touchdowns for this offense, make the life easier for Josh Allen. So I really believe Willis McGahee is the right fit to make this offense better. So having Jason Peters and Willis McGahee added to this offense, we still have a weapon, a pass catcher between a tight end or a wide receiver, and a quarterback. Obviously, we don't need a quarterback for this team. Josh Allen is the guy. Nobody who I could add from the drought-era Bills would make Allen expendable. But I don't believe anybody in Bills Mafia is really comfortable with the level of our backups, and I believe we agree that if Josh goes down, our season is over. So, which quarterback from the drought era could fix it? It's tough. It's really tough. I don't believe any of them, but I believe they definitely can be upgrades over Matt Barkley or Kyle Allen. So, Tyrod Taylor played playoff football for the Bills. He's out. He's not eligible. He would have been my pick. All right. But he's not eligible. I think Tyrod would have been the guy who could come in for Josh and manage the game, take care of the ball, convert some third downs with his legs, be a threat with his legs, throw some bombs downfield. I think a lot of people dislikes him, but it's not fair. I think Tyrod did his job and what he always was coached to do since his rookie season as a backup sixth rounder from the Ravens. He developed at the best he could at what he was coached to do. Unfortunately, he never became what he really could have become, but it's part of the game and it's part of the way people coaches some players. So Tyrod ineligible. I think the options are Ryan Fitzpatrick, the easy name here, a guy who's loved by all Bills Mafia and a great leader, a guy who would be beloved by all the roster, all the players, the coaches probably too, a great leader. My problem with Fitzpatrick is we can't close our eyes and wish we haven't seen how unclutch he was, right? It's sad, man. But every time we needed a game-winning drive from Fitzpatrick, we knew, man. We knew the Fitz pick was coming. So it was tragic. It was depressing. It was sad, but it was real. So unfortunately, we couldn't count on Fitz to win, right? And it's sad to say, but he would have been an easy pick here. But I don't know, man. I still think uh, Drew Bledsoe in his first year as Bill his beginning with the Bills, I think he still is the best option as a backup for Josh Allen from the drought era Bills teams. Drew Bledsoe had the arm. He was already experienced. He was already a Super Bowl winner. So he could definitely put the ball in the hands of your playmakers. I think he would have been the perfect guy to back up Josh with experience, with the combination of experience, arm talent, uh, smarts of the game, win gen, and so he didn't have the mobility, obviously, and the team would have to change with him under helm. But it wasn't a problem to have Casey Keenum last season as a backup. So Drew Bledsoe is my pick to be the quarterback added to reinforce this team as a backup. Fitzpatrick, honorable mention. Another mention that, and then we are entering the area of the guys who could have been brought in differently and developed differently and might have been better with JP Losman, a guy who had an arm and a cannon just like Josh. So, but we know it would be on how they could develop them. Trent Edwards, pre-injury, pre-concussions, was a smart quarterback also, and even NJ Manuel had potential maybe to, if developed better, to be a better quarterback, no doubt. I think Kyle Warden might be worth be mentioned here because he was frustrating sometimes. He was, but he could do some nice things too, and he was a veteran, a smart one. So as a backup to Josh, he might have been a good choice too to come in and produce without much practice and much time with the first team, just like we saw when he got his opportunity in AJ's place and never looked back. So he also, I think he was worth being mentioned. But Drew Bledsoe, my pick here. And the last area where we could improve the Bills team on the offensive side of the ball, the weapons area, the pass catchers, right? And today we heard some rumblings of the Bills being interested again in the Andrew Hopkins, but not wanting to pay him, and maybe Bean is still trying to work his magic, but we'll see. We'll see if it's going to be possible to add Hopkins. I'd love to have him. Anyway, looking at the Bills era, the Bills drought era teams, we have a lot of great options to add to this team, right? A lot of guys worth being mentioned. Again, Modes isn't eligible. He played playoff football for the Bills and played really well in the playoffs, right? Who doesn't remember that Dolphin Dolphins game where he set some NFL records for playoffs. So, guys who I'd like to mention. First one, uh, Peerless Price. Peerless Price is a guy who's not mentioned enough by Mafia, me included. I think he was very productive as a number two for Modes for a long time, and he left for the Falcons, but when he came back, he could produce again. Peerless Price was a nice partner in crime for Modes and deserves to be mentioned here. He obviously isn't winning this contest, but I'd like to mention here and send my shout out to Peerless Price for being an awesome number two for the Bills for a long time. Other guys who are worth being mentioned. Sammy Watkins. I know a lot of people hate Sammy Watkins. I know a lot of people are like, oh, we should have drafted Khalil Mack instead, and he was a bust and things like that. The thing is, man, it's too bad he got injured so many times, because when he was healthy, he was awesome. And having rookie Sammy Watkins, healthy Sammy Watkins playing with Josh Allen, man, it would have been awesome. Okay, it would have been awesome, no doubt. Having Sammy Watkins opposite to Stephon Diggs playing with Josh Allen, man, I wish I could have uh, seen it, okay, because he really could separate, he could win at all levels. He could catch the ball. He was clutch. We saw some clutch catches late in the games, game-winning catches, and so he was a handful for every cornerback he faced. Unfortunately, he was injured more often than not, so that's why he's not winning here. Other guys who are worth being mentioned, and some people really love Robert Woods. I don't think he stands a chance against even Sammy Watkins, in my opinion. But the top two guys who I was really between them are Stevie Johnson and Lee Evans. All right, and different kind of players who played together and even complement each other. And I just believe if you add Lee Evans, it's more for a role in place of Gabriel Davis. You are taking Gabriel Davis out of the field and inserting Lee Evans as your deep threat, a guy who would go downfield and win more often than not. Obviously, it wasn't all Lee Evans' game. He had a nice repertoire. Despite his size, he was a good red zone weapon also. And it's impressive how, as early as he became a pro, as a rookie, he could contribute opposite Eric Moulds. So I think adding Lee Evans, you couldn't go wrong adding Lee Evans opposite to Stephon Diggs and giving this another great weapon downfield to Josh Allen. And that's why I believe a lot of people would have Lee Evans as their choice. But I would add Steve Johnson. Stevie Johnson is my choice. Love Stevie. He was here already in the leading the charge, and it was awesome to have him here. Shout out to Stevie. And he promised me coming to Brazil soon, so I'm trying to find some opportunities for him, but it's not easy with football here in Brazil, guys. But I hope and I wish we can make it happen at some point. Anyway, it's not just because he's a favorite of mine, one of my favorite Bills ever, and he's an awesome guy. But man, everybody who saw Stevie playing, we know what I'm talking about. He revolutionized the wide receiver position. The way people run routes nowadays started, or it was born thanks to Stevie's way of running routes, and we can see a lot of Stevie's ways on Diggs, on Devontae Adams, on Keenan Allen, on Garrett Wilson, a lot of those guys who can separate Jerry Jeudy, those guys who run great routes, Amari Cooper. You can see a lot of Stevie on those guys, on the way those guys run routes. So he was a stud running routes. He could separate against the best of the best. He could beat Darrell Reeves on an island. So And one of the biggest problems for the Bills last season uh, was when people were like, okay, let's take away Stephon Diggs out of the game. Let's take him out of the game. Let's double him. Uh, let's cover him, triple team him. Let's take him away of the game and let's make somebody else beat us. Let's cover the other guys one on one and let's see if they can create separation, make plays, and move the chains. And unfortunately, a lot of the guys, Gabe Davis, who was injured with his ankle, Cole Beasley came back from retirement. John Brown, same thing. Guys who unfortunately weren't at their best anymore. Shakira rookie. Mackenzie, unfortunately, not ready for the spotlight. Those guys couldn't often beat coverages and beat one-on-one coverages and make plays for the Bills. And the Bills suffered with that. Josh suffered with that. If you give Stevie Johnson to Josh Allen, line him up in the slot, right? And you have Stephon Diggs opposite. You have Dawson Knox. You have now Dalton Kincaid. Man, I wish people try to double and send all the help Diggs' way and let Stevie one-on-one against second cornerbacks, against nickel cornerbacks, against safeties or linebackers. He would eat, man. He would really make them pay. So Stevie Johnson is my choice. You couldn't go wrong with Lee Evans too, but I think you add Lee Evans, you gotta move Gabe Davis to another role, right? And so the fit isn't as perfect as with Stevie Johnson. And I believe if prime Stevie Johnson would really be awesome for this offense and would really help Josh all the time. Josh would be able to lock on him and watch him beat the coverage and separate and make the catches for him. So I wish we could add those guys. And let me know your opinion via YouTube channel, via chat. What do you think? Did I make a good job adding reinforcements for this Bills roster? So to finish, my additions from the Bills teams from the drought era: backup quarterback Drew Bledsoe, running back 1 or 1A, right, to James Cook, Willis McGahee, pass catcher Stevie Johnson, offensive line Jason Peter, defensive line Marcel Darius, linebacker Takil Spikes, and defensive backfield Terrence McGee. What do you think about my picks? Let me know, Bills Mafia. It's been a blast to spending this 1 hour with you, and the leading the charge will be on vacation for a week, right? I will be on vacation next week, so no leading the charge next Sunday in Portuguese, no leading the charge in the previous Sunday. In the other Sunday, the next Sunday after this one. No leading the charge in Portuguese too, and no leading the charge next Tuesday. In fact, no leading the charge on Tuesdays anymore, but every Friday, starting from Friday. Let me just really check the schedule here. But so I'm on vacation next week. I will be back on the 23rd. So leading the charge coming back on the July 28th, with the Bills already starting the training camps on the 26th. So I'll be back on the 28th in English, talking to you, bringing the news about the start of the training camps, and then in Portuguese in the 30th. All right. So 1 week and almost those 2 weeks without leading the charge, but I'll be back in the 28th with another one in English. Okay, Mafia, thank you so much for being with me. Let me know your opinion about these reinforcements from the drought era Bills. Take care, see you, and go Bills.